Hello, I'm Aimee Bechtle, and I'm a principal software engineer with the MITRE Corporation.
And I'm Bill Donaldson. I'm a senior principal engineer. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I'm a project leader on a bunch of large Air Force and Army ERP programs now. So welcome to our excellent DevOps adventure. So those may get some of that reference. It's really cool being among the clan that really get DevOps. It's exciting to be talking to the same people that speak the same language, because when we go home, sometimes people don't get what we're talking about. So our journey I first started working with Aimee 10 years ago. I was working and I hired Aimee as a performance test engineer manager. She was 8 months pregnant and ready to go out on maternity leave. As you can imagine, my wife's going, why are you hiring somebody who's pregnant and going to go out for many months? But it was well worth it. And so you'll notice sort of a family theme here, because this pregnancy thing reoccurs. I had nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it. I mean, this is our DevOps van that takes us through our journey.
So a quick overview of what MITRE is. We're 7,500 employees spread around the world. The British Empire used to say the sun never sets on the British Empire. That's no longer true, but for the MITRE Corporation, it is still evolving around the world. We're a not-for-profit corporation, and we do work for the DOD, the FAA, and the IRS. As you can heard other people talk about risk averse. We're not risk averse. We have allergy to error. So as you can imagine, working with these customers, when we have our data, we don't want to have anything happen. And so as part of that, we've even instituted SOX compliance, even though we're not for profit. We're not a public company. We don't have to do that. But that's sort of the culture that we live in. So our DevOps journey started about 5 years ago. I was the head of the IT development group for our custom web apps. We had about 50 developers working for me and about 100 applications, web, Java, PHP, some .NET and Oracle.
So 5 years ago, I had transitioned from the performance test team, and I took a new position leading the application release and deployment. I crossed over from dev to ops, shocking. And in that new role, I was leading 4.5 staff who were performing about 2,600 manual deployments to our test and production environments, supporting about 300 apps. That ranged from the custom web apps that Bill built to the COTS products, desktop, you name it, we were pushing it out. In this new role, he was now my customer, and I was pregnant yet again with my 4th child, so he was going to have to wait another maternity leave to work with me. But that was a small challenge. It's a very small challenge compared to the journey that we were about to start, which is the journey we want to take you on. We want to walk through in this presentation. We want to have you take away 2 things. The emotional roller coaster that we went on, and then second, what we did after the system was up and running to get people into the system. And hopefully you can take that back to your organizations if you need to. And so we packed up the van and we went on our road trip. This is the process that I inherited when I first took over the team. I'm not going to get into the details, but I think a picture says 1,000 words. It was an obstacle course. And even though it was an obstacle course, it was a very well-known, well-understood, and practiced course that the development community knew how to navigate through. In an ITIL assessment, we scored, of the 8 processes that were assessed, we scored a 3 out of 5. It was the highest of all the processes because it was repeatable. And so, that sounds great, but it still had a ton of problems, right? The problems, the 3 Ps I call them, it was paperwork intensive. The developers had to write tons of instructions for my team to deploy the apps.
One of our applications required a 43-page CM form to roll things into production.
It had a lot of people. On a deployment, we had to hand off to the sysadmins, the DBAs. If you came to my team, and there was only one step. My team had a 24-hour SLA. But as soon as it left my team to be handed off to somebody else, that SLA went out the door. They didn't matter, and people could have waited a week, 2 weeks for their application to be in the environment.
So to do a production rollout, we would take 7 people, 4 hours, and we'd do that Wednesday night starting at 8 o'clock, and we were lucky if we finished by midnight.
The last P, processing. We were running the builds in each environment, getting different results each time. None of the environments matched. I mean, this all probably sounds really familiar because I think everybody has this same story. So we were doing this process for the following technologies. We're using the typical tools, like we had build scripts, some people did, Subversion for source control, and Java and Oracle was a common platform in Windows and Linux. We had an average cycle time, and again, this is across 300 apps, so we had a really wide variance. So it was about 15 days from the time that they said the code was ready until it was in the user's hand, but it ranged from a minimum of 30 minutes. And that 30 minutes, trust me, is just a simple SQL script being run, and that's probably under an emergency situation. And that happened maybe once a week. And then we saw up to 486 days for larger, more complex apps. And as I mentioned, it was about 2,600 deploys to just production and test.
So while Aimee was out on maternity leave, one of the key things I wanted to do was change the culture. I wanted to make it an exciting place for people to work, and the big thing I saw changing people's life was freeing them up. So what we did was we started doing all the typical continuous integration things. We had test-driven development, all the things that everybody else has talked about.
And so he's hit my service, which boom, he was developing really fast, and then he had to wait to get his applications in, and he's thinking, oh, they're slowing me down. And meanwhile, I'm thinking, I just got this level 3 ITIL process, and I have a mature team, and I'm going to have my 4th child, and this is going to be great work-life balance. This is going to be easy, right? No, boy, was I wrong, because he had different ideas. And that's...
So as Aimee came back, she met with us, and I told her all the great things we're doing. We're super excited about doing all the continuous CI work, and we were rocking and rolling. And I was trying to get her on board because we knew that was the next step, was get her to get the release management stuff up on plane. And so I told her, it's sort of like probably not the best way. I said, hey, your service sucks. It's 24 hours SLA. That's about 23 and a half hours too long.
So I fly up to Boston from DC, I meet with him, and he's saying these things to me: continuous integration, Jenkins, automation. And I don't know if you remember Charlie Brown episodes talking to his teacher, wah, 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 wah. I'm like, what? But we're so good, And I hear what he's saying, and when you're a team leading staff and you hear automation, fear kind of sets in. You're a little worried about getting jobs replaced and your own service. And though I'm hearing him, I am concerned, I'm fearful, but yet I am intrigued. So Aimee started talking about making processes change the tools that were already existing, streamlining reporting, and I'm thinking, no, she really doesn't get it, right? We've talked about that as other people talked about it. So we sat down with her and really went through what is Jenkins and stuff like that. It took a long time to get the folks that were doing the manual stuff into what the new techniques and tools. We also brought Chris Sterling in, and he said, hey, this is the land of unicorns, but you can do this. We're mere mortals, right? We're not horses. We're just mere mortals. So we did a lot of work with showing her how we could get it done. So I went back up to Boston. I met with Chris Sterling. I talked to the developers. But the most important thing was I got my own education. I had started attending all the webinars that came in my mailbox every 5 minutes, and reading white papers. I researched the tools and technology, and I bought Jez Humble's continuous delivery book. I read it front to back. It's now my Bible at work. And I started to get it. And it wasn't so much anymore that I was fearful about what was happening to my team. I started to realize this is something my customer needed. This is something that IT needed. And I changed my perspective, and I called him up and I said, okay, let's do this. And the chasm, I make sure everybody got the animation at the bottom, it started to close between us, so we thought.
So they were still in the waterfall methodology, and we said, hey, Agile's a better way. And so the first thing, besides teaching about Agile, we defined some acceptance criteria. So with that, this is literally what we had. It had fit on a single PowerPoint slide, really simple. And the whole thing was all the things you typically see, single command, build, deploy, all of this stuff. The key thing was that we wanted this to be enabled to anybody. It wasn't, the ops folks said, oh no, it can only be for certain developers. We're like, no, this is going to be any tester, any developer. The other thing was we wanted some, deploy to production without handoffs. The CM team had to be the guardian, fine, but no handoffs after that. And then we've been doing sonar and code quality. So we said, before it releases, we want to check in before it goes to production that you've met the certain quality standards.
And I agreed with his acceptance criteria. I had some of my own. I'm responsible for SOX audits. We'd still do the SOX compliance and working with the external auditors on meeting all the IT controls. So I wanted to make sure there was auditability and traceability. And because we are the guardians and maintain the integrity of the production environment, restoring back to that known good state was really important. And it had to be able to roll back easily and readily and rapidly. So I agreed to these. And this became the first iteration of our backlog. I went into our agile management tool and I put these in as stories. And we started to form our launch and get ready to kick this whole thing off. Before I could do that, I had to hire a build and release engineer, opened up a rec, and I brought in somebody who used to work at Fidelity. And we then put together a team. We were really careful to choose people that were influential and well-respected by their peers to be on our team. And it was cross-functional. We got everybody together. We went over the mission, the vision, the goals. Everybody nodded their head, yay, yay, yay. And we got everybody on board. And we picked our app. The first app that we picked was simple. It was not something that had multi-platform and went everywhere and had a lot of modules or moving parts. It was a simple Java app with an Oracle database backend. That could help us get the tool chain in place. That's what we wanted. We wanted to get the technology and the process in place. We would worry about evolving to other platforms later. And everybody said, yay, let's go. So we got everybody on board, and we went.
And we went, and we went. So we have monthly sprints and product reviews at the end. And the feedback from me and other development team was, this isn't going to work, right? It was, ops thinking. It wasn't enabling the developer. It was going to take months and months for every application to get into this tool chain. So we said, hey, it's not working. And we had this conversation repeatedly. And eventually I just had a heart-to-heart with Aimee. And I said, Aimee, this isn't working. You need to understand this is broken.
So Gene used the term this morning, stuck in the mud. So I guess our van was stuck in the mud. Somewhere along the way, I had gotten lost. It was taking a really long time. I knew it wasn't working. We weren't getting what we needed to in place. There was a couple reasons why. I was trying to be cost conscious, and I did not get training or help from the outside. I figured I could use my staff and the knowledge that I hired in to get him to learn the tool without, he could figure it out on his own. And so that added a lot of time. So when Bill called, it hurt. I mean, it did. At this point, I was at a crossroads. Do I drop the project and say, I failed, let somebody else take it over? Or do I be the person that I know he hired me to be, which is that stubborn, focused, loves a challenge, and that's what I did. I mean, I didn't want to let him down. This is family. This is my work family. This is a guy stuck through 2 pregnancies, and I relocated to LA for 3 years, and he supported me in all of that. And so I decided to do it, but I said, I need help. And that was hard for me to say, I need help. I'm not that kind of person. So we got, at this point, a course correction, which there's somebody in the room here who helped us do this course correction. Eric Minnick is here. So we bought a tool, and we didn't get training. So the first thing I did was, let's get training. And we had the vendor, Eric, came in for a couple days and taught everybody who was going to work on the team and touch the tool, how to use the tool and what it does. And then we brought in expertise. I actually kept Eric on for another week, and he reviewed our implementation and looked at what we were trying to do and did a gap analysis and recommendations on how we could get out of this hole, and met with us weekly afterwards. And then Bill brought in, from the developer side, to help with the build and work with those guys, also brought in professional services. The most important thing we did was we freed up resources. This cannot be a hobby project. If you want it to be successful, it's got to be at least, we said, an 80% commitment from the staff. So he made sure his staff on the development side was available, and I made sure the ops staff were available, and everybody focused and got it done. And we worked against a new plan. We regroomed the backlog, reevaluated our tasks and schedule, and made it happen. So 13 months later, after that kickoff, 13 long months, We implemented what we call the automated build and deploy solution. It's affectionately coined A, B, and D. And A, B, and D is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Developer commits code, it runs a build, deposits the build, and then we run the deploy workflow to deploy it. And it was a success.
So we celebrated our success.
We do what everybody does to make everybody happy. We fed people. So everybody was excited. It was working. But again, that was one app. Now we had to climb the mountain. The van had to drive up the mountain. And how do we scale? I was just a bottleneck for so many years. I didn't want to be another bottleneck. I don't want people to have to wait a month to come into this system. And I was very mindful of that. So we we wanted to be a value-added service. We wanted to get people on board. So then now we started the marketing and adoption phase.
So the key that what we did was we identified all the applications that could be enabled for continuous delivery. And what we did was we made it very visible. We put it out in the hallway where the developers come in and out every day. And we identified and put them on stickies. And we identified which ones were enabled, which ones hadn't been, and then we had a work in progress queue. And if you notice, it's much smaller because we didn't want a lot of work in progress. So this way it kept things moving, and if something stayed up there for too long, everybody could see it and we could all pitch in to make it go.
We wanted to work with the developers and engage them in a way that they were accustomed to. So we developed sample stories and sprint plans for them to pop into their backlog so they can get started and put them in their release planning.
So after we had the stories, we also knew that some of the people weren't really up on playing for what it was to get this stuff into the tool. So we created sample scripts for them. We created checklists that they would do to make sure that they could actually work it and get it going there. And we created a SharePoint site that they could go pull all this information from themselves.
We handheld.
You got a handheld, right? Because everybody's coming at different levels. So then we started marketing, right? So we got everything, infrastructure in place. We were allowing them to go on fast. But what we would do is what was going to motivate them. So what we did was we created more visible metrics. And so again, simply in the hallway by the developers, but also by the senior officer, senior management. And what we did was how many deployments to production? Because that's the key thing. Not did you get to deploy somewhere or integration, it was to production. And so what we did was we set a target for 100% of what we did 1 year manually in a quarter. So we were looking for 400% increase of our deployments. The other thing is every Wednesday afternoon we had a snack fest. You bring food, developers show up, and we had the core team come up and say, hey, which application are you going to put into the framework this week? Let me know because I'm going to attend your sprint planning sessions. So that we provided more guidance and help to get them there.
Nothing was better than the water cooler talk. The guys that came in on Thursday mornings after a Wednesday night deployment and like, I only worked 15 minutes and I got to watch the Bruins play. Or the developer that on Tuesday morning, the 3 changes that he developed the day before were already in use by the user. So they all started talking and bending people's ear, and then I had people start calling me because they knew, oh, I don't have to work for 4 hours on a Wednesday night if I do this. I also trained my staff that when they received the manual instruction sets, what to look for as a candidate for this application. And then we started a list. Who are we going to go talk to and who are we going to go demo? And then we added formal metrics to our CIO and work package reviews with senior management.
And I love hearing those stories, about how you're able to, get it released out very quickly.
So that was great, and we started to finally see the end of, after all the potholes, the speed bumps, flat tires, we started to see results. So we do have 68 applications in the system. For different reasons, we still have people who don't want to come on. We have people who are still afraid to export from head out of SVN. I mean, it's, they're just late adopters. We support multiple platforms. We can turn platforms around really quickly. Our engineer was really great at designing kind of a snap-on way of getting technology in. We've dropped from 15 days to 9 days. It's a 40% improvement. It's still not where we want to be. I'll get into that in a second. But from 30 minutes down to 2 minutes, and this is a lot of our apps do go through in 2 minutes. That's like a 98.5% improvement on deployment or just cycle time from the time code was ready and it's in production. 75% of deployments are automated. Our throughput's up about 38%. We have a ratio of 3 to 1 of deploys to test to prod. It's about what we're doing. So a lot of that throughput is to test. I didn't lay anybody off. They got to move on to higher value, higher skilled work, and their professional careers have taken off, and they love it. We applied and got the recognition for the Information Week's Top 500 Business Technology Innovators last year, profiling this project on our application. And all of this is great. We're really proud. It is nothing compared to the quality of life that we all experience of no more long weekends or long Wednesday nights or spending the next day at work trying to figure out how to revert back an app.
I mean, I think that's key, changing people's lives, right? Giving them time back.
And that's why a company like us, a not-for-profit corporate IT government, quasi-government organization would do this, is because we wanted to give life back to our staff. So now I'm looking to the future, and we have the basic continuous integration and automated deploy, but I want to do full-blown continuous delivery. And even though we can do automated builds and deploys, our infrastructure is still manually configured and provisioned, and they still have Snowflake servers. And we still, though we have automated performance testing, we don't have automated functional regression testing. We've really struggled, a lot of stop and starts on that. Wow. So we're having a family reunion. We're getting back together, and I'm not replacing, I guess, but we have 2 new team members. We have an ops automation engineer now on the team who's gone to chef training, because I'm not going to repeat the same mistakes. I've had a consultant since June working with us, and we are getting everybody to training, and we're going to approach this the right way. And we have a test automation engineer. And they're saying, let's do it again. Let's evolve. And off our van goes.
So, I think the keys to this are anybody can do it, right? If a not-for-profit, government-faced thing where everybody's very risk-averse can do it, anybody can. The key is knowing where you want to go, right? You have to know where you want to go and why, and you have to keep that in your forefront, right? Aimee talked about, getting stuck and, she quit, but I think it's the, knowing where you want to go. And again, patience. Not everybody's going to be in the same plane. The developers got really, really frustrated because the op folks weren't, on board, and, they wanted to take their own approach. So you just have to make sure that you get people through this change management. Education is key. And then, obviously using the agile stuff that everybody knows about.
So what do we need help with? Probably everybody's familiar with, we need to change skill sets and mindsets to support infrastructure as code and test automation. The infrastructure as code and the idea of dropping down the number of sysadmins is very scary. And we need to break up the silos and figure out how to move from a development team to a cross-functional delivery team. I asked a sysadmin, I said, how would you feel if you got a storyboard card from one of the development teams? And oh no, it's got to come through the ticketing system. So getting through things like that.
And the other is, we haven't solved the large ERP systems, how to get those into DevOps. And that's a huge challenge, trying to solve that in the DoD. I see a lot of head nods, so if people have some, ideas or where your challenges are, maybe we could partner as a community and move this thing forward, because it is a big need. So with that, I want to thank everybody for their time. If you have any questions, we have about 5 minutes left, so we have a few time for some questions.
Okay, and we put the lessons learned as bumper stickers that we collected along the way. Like when you see cars, you don't have to meet anybody anymore. You just read the back of their car, you'll know who they are.
So real quick, I come from a nonprofit as well, and one of the things we're struggling with is do we need to make any structural changes to support some of the DevOps activities? Sounds like based on your slide before this, one of the things you're struggling with is what do you do in that space? How do you do? So did you do all of this without any structural changes?
Yeah, we did this without. So we did the agile thing. Start from where you are and start iterating with what you can control. Making changes to the organization is hard, and you have to understand why. And if you do it premature and it doesn't work, then what? Yeah. So no, you can get this going with just as it is.
Just promoting collaboration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. You got to find the change agents.
Well, and I would say a key thing for us was hiring a build and release engineer with an eye for how to automate.
Yeah. Question?
Yeah, the checklist that you use to identify whether applications are ready to be put into the framework, is that shareable?
Yeah, I'm sure we can. I'm sure, Gene, when we submitted this, he was so impressed because you got this thing out into the public. So it will take a little bit of hoops, but absolutely. hook up with, send us an email, or and we'll get it to you. Other questions?
So one of the things obviously is cost, and I've heard some people talk about DevOps initially can appear more expensive, especially if you're putting you're trying to eliminate the specialists and go with generalists and you go to engineers and things like that. Did you guys experience that? I mean, obviously the return is well worth it.
Yeah.
Initially selling it, it's like, hey, I need this release engineer or whatever.
So I have to be honest, I did have somebody leave my team, and there was an opening. And I struck while the iron was hot. And I re-engineered that position. I actually called Bill up and said, help me write the rec. And he helped me write the rec.
Yeah.
You used existing funding to kind of do a
Switch, change of direction.
And then for the tool funding, we just started off with a small number of users. And then when we proved the ROI and the senior management saw what it did, then they started throwing money at it.
Other questions?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I think that some of the ones were the ones that I was focused on was the time to get things into production. So showing the the overall cycle time, and that was a compelling thing because you could sit there and say, oh, we could do that. But also along with those. We did get the number of deployments in there.
That's what this graph is actually, is the blue line's the increase in the automated deployments, and the red line is the decrease in manual. And we crossed over 50% about a year into it. And that's, we showed that one. And I also showed a decreasing FTE line as well.
But also what really sold them was the stories about getting something into production in 5 minutes. The stories, like upstairs you heard about, the Moby Dick, right? These allegories. If you can get these stories going, the water cooler stories, those are the ones that sell also. They love the metrics, and if you can get a dashboard, it sells because they love pretty pictures.
Okay, so it was the metrics you were using anyways, it wasn't something special you did?
Oh no, we added these metrics into it.
Yeah,
These were new metrics.
we didn't have them.
So I think we're at time.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.